So what have been kind of your first impressions coming to the first NFL facility? What's kind of been your first impressions?
I mean, I just say it's everything I dreamed of. It really takes me back to, when I was a young kid, playing in the backyard, envisioning all those, fourth and longs and, third and 15s, for the wins, like just being in here and being in this amazing football environment and this, culture of winning, it just takes me back to when I was a child. So I'm loving it.
Aeneas, how excited are you to work with someone like a Pro Bowl defensive tackle like Nnamdi Madubuike, but also when you kind of look at this team, it's not a whole lot of established defensive line depth. Do you feel like there's a pathway for you to really be able to make an impact?
Yeah, I mean, just to be able to come in and, watch those kind of guys, like you said, like Madubuike guys, I've, watched my whole college career, always going out there and trying to emulate their game. It's gonna be special. I'm gonna be a little starstruck, but, I'm gonna try to hold it in and, make sure I'm getting back to work.
It seemed like you had a bit of a chip on your shoulder that you lasted as long as you did in the NFL draft. Can you just take us through your emotions?
Yeah, I mean, that's the same chip I've had my whole life, whether that had to do with the NFL draft or whether that had to do with, just how I came up in high school. I just feel like I've always had that chip on my shoulder and, it's helped to get me here. So, I just continue to let that fuel me.
In college league, at least, seem to be more moves for an inside lineman than I typically see. What's your go-to?
My go-to move as in what?
As pass rusher.
It's kind of just on what the offensive linemen's give me. I kind of pride myself on being able to do a lot. And with that being said, that kind of just goes against who I'm going against, the personnel and, the kind of ball player he is and the film I watched earlier that week.
Yes, I'm sure I've asked other people this, but what goes through your head the very first time that you see this NFL jersey that's actually yours?
I mean, it almost brought tears in my eyes, and I'm not just saying that. Literally, like I said earlier, man, it just reminds me of just my childhood. The thing I dreamed of my whole life, so just come to fruition. And I told my parents that and this is just the beginning. And my job to them, and the standard I have to uphold is this is going to be the last time they see it. So that's just what I try to go through every day.
What's been kind of maybe the biggest surprise since you got drafted? That maybe somebody reach out to you didn't expect, or any big surprises since you gotten drafted?
Yeah, just being able to be so close to, I guess I could say, legends and guys I looked up to. Just being able to, reach out and call guys like Madubuike and being able to reach out and know that hopefully one day I can turn around and see Roquan Smith behind me. Those kind of things like that. That's probably the biggest shock to me.
How much have you been asked about the tweet you put out after when the draft was over and everything about for the rest of the NFL and the GMs, the message?
Not much.
You come from a football family, and go back to your grandfather. When did you first think, all right, the NFL, that's the goal, that's the dream, and what are some of the messages that you've gotten from your family and what it takes to get there?
Yeah, I mean, from early as I can remember, I always imagined playing in the NFL, and thankfully, something I don't take for granted is that I have a lot of good role models, like you said, like my grandfather being one of them, my dad being one of them. So just having those kind of role models growing up was just always a huge thing for me. So it was always a dream for me growing up, and I'm just proud of myself and, trying to, I owe it to him to keep this thing going.
I saw you can do the worm. Is that a possible sack dance, or that's for what?
I mean, you never know. We'll have to see when we get there.
All right, Aeneas, thank you. Go ahead, Jonas.
You mentioned your parents. Could you talk about the inspiration for your name and just how cool it is to have something as unique as that?
Yeah, no doubt about it. I assume you're talking about Aeneas? Oh, okay, good. Yeah, so, I was named after Aeneas Williams. So, growing up, my dad, like I said, always been a big football family. So, seeing one of the legends named Aeneas Williams, it was just something that my parents just thought was amazing. With that being said, my brother, he's named after Braylon Edwards. So, it's just, we got a whole big football family, and, I hope to keep that tradition going on.
What about fun?
Well, I got the nickname Fub when I was a little kid. So, I mean, I rarely even hear my government name nowadays. But, when I was a baby, I was fat and chubby. So they always called me Fubby growing up. And, now that I got older, it got shortened to Fub. So, I ran with it.
All right, thank you, Aeneas.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.